Hello, friends. Are we live? Here we are. Hello. Kill this music. Oh, man, this has been very unprofessional. Welcome to the live stream. Wow, I had this cool banner. Look at this. I had this all ready to show you guys, and I had some funky music queued up, and then I accidentally clicked go live before I put them up. So there you go. There's my intro for you for today's episode 3 of Man Talks. And you can see the topic there, which we're going to get into in a little bit. Hello, my friends. My name is Daniel Midson-Short. Good to see you. I hope you're doing well. I'm excited to be here today. It's Friday morning, my time, about 11 a.m. This is episode 3 of this show. And it's been interesting so far. We've already got some reactions, some commentary that's come on board as a result of this. And I'm excited by that because I think there's been some very positive comments and some not so positive ones, which I'm going to get into in a little bit today. But yes, for those of you who are here for the first time, I greatly appreciate you joining us. I can see a couple of people joining now online, which is fantastic. And if you're watching this later, I appreciate you as well. Would love your comments and thoughts as well. So Man Talks is my attempt to start to put together a community of men who I call the men in the middle, which we're going to get into in a second, the men who want a sort of alternative option to the way they live their life, to the extremes that are out there. And so that's what we're going to talk about today in today's episode is the myth of the alpha male and the beta male and the sigma male and all these interesting things. I've been doing a deep dive the last couple of days on this topic, and I'm going to attempt to talk through it in a objective way as we go through today and do my very best to do that, as I try to do. And we've got to episode 3, and I appreciate anyone who's joining us again. My goal here is to, over time, create a community through this live stream. And I think that's the most valuable thing we can do together because we're all on our own path individually. And for men, especially men in their 30s and 40s who seem to be the demographic who relate to me, there's a lot of isolation. There's a lot of feeling like you don't have any support. And so my goal through the Man Talks episodes is to actually start to solve that. Hopefully give you a forum, a place where you can share, you can meet other like-minded men. I can share my ideas and my thoughts and my experiences as well. So that's what we're trying to do. So let me grab my fancy glasses here because I can't see as well as I used to, my friends. But let me talk through an interesting experience that happened to me after I posted a video the other day. So I posted a video on Wednesday this week, which was around the topic of the men in the middle. And in that video, I started off by talking about the concept of the alpha male or the beta male, and the extremes of those two. And as a result of that, I decided on a whim to make one of the thumbnails around the idea of the myth of the alpha male. And I think the title was The Alpha Male Delusion, I believe. And so as a result of that, YouTube picked up that thumbnail and decided to run with that one. There's a couple that you can test, and it chose that one, and it took off, and that video's done really well. It's had like 1,500 views, which is fantastic. I'm really grateful and excited for that. But it also brought up some interesting comments, and I got officially my first hater comment, which I'm going to share with you here. And this one was kind of interesting. I woke up in the morning and I saw this. And so it was something that I thought, whoa, okay, here we go. This is what it means to actually have haters and people who go at you directly online. And so I'm going to read through this and then we're going to discuss it a little bit. And I promise I won't do this too often, but I thought, hey, seeing as this is my first actual hater comment, I want to explore it a little bit. So the comment says, betas are men like Daniel who have a history of mediocre success based on his LinkedIn and preach the merits of being a man in the middle when their center of reference is a piffle, predictable spew fostered and nurtured by pussy worship theory in order to derive a shred of meaning out of their soul-sapped lives. Keep up the good work. Love you. And I couldn't resist being a little bit sarcastic and saying, thanks, man. Appreciate the perspective. I love you too. And at the time, you can see I edited it as well because I wrote something a little meaner, and then I thought, no, that's a better way to respond to that. And my mentors, people who are much further ahead of me in this world of online communication and entertainment, the things we do, have told me never respond to your haters. So I decided to be as polite as I could. But I did want to unpack this just a little bit because it is the first time that it's happened to me. And it's very interesting when someone makes judgments about you without really knowing you. And hey, that's part of the world that we're in. And this is the reality that I deal with being a content creator, I guess. So, first of all, thank you, sir, for the comment. I appreciate that. I appreciate that you spent time looking at my LinkedIn. That's very nice of you. Anyone can go and do that. I'm very Googleable with my last name. So please go and look at my LinkedIn and my work experience. I think I've been very, very open about my mediocre success in a lot of areas. Yes, I was part of a startup that failed. I've run my own business for many years. I've now gone back into working in a more corporate world where I do training and communication skills training and leadership coaching and things like that, which I really love. But yeah, I did move away from the entrepreneurial life several years ago for many reasons, but mostly because just it was exhausting me and wearing me out. I wrote a full article about that on my blog as well. If you want to check that out, it's called Farewell to Entrepreneurship and the frustrations I had there. So yeah, he's right. He's actually right that I have had mediocre success in many areas of my life. And that's a frustration in some ways for me. I certainly do wish that my startup had succeeded and I'd become a billionaire. I wish that running my own business was a lot less stressful and didn't wear me out. But at the same time, it's led me to a place in my life where I feel very fulfilled by what I'm doing. And I'm excited and I'm very grateful to be part of the team of people I work with. The second part of this, the idea of the men in the middle being a center of reference for a piffle of predictable spew fostered and nurtured by pussy worship theory in order to derive a shred of meaning out of their soul-sapped lives. Okay, that's a very strong view. I'll take it on board. Possibly there is some truth in that. I know being part of a loving, meaningful relationship, there is definitely compromise. If that means pussy worship, okay, I'll take that on board. But at the same time, I think I would question whoever this is who wrote this about whether they are actually living a very fulfilling life if they're doing the complete opposite to this. And so I don't want to get too deep into this because I don't know the person. I don't know their life experience. I don't know what pain they've suffered. And I'm sure they, same as me, want to be loved. They want to be fulfilled. They want to live a great life. But I did want to acknowledge that this is part of reality. I think when you have a position online that people are going to sort of come at you and say things like this. And when I posted this as a community post, several people commented underneath and said, well, he's right, or, maybe there's some truth in this. And there is some truth in this, my friends. Yes, there are parts of what he's saying here that are very true about me. And I think about men in the middle as well. It's just a reality of life. And hey, if you're able to get past this phase of life and become, the extreme alpha and the super successful person and live that life, more power to you. I respect it. It's not for me. It's not for a lot of people who are part of this community, but I wish you the very best. And that's kind of all I have to say about that. All right. Well, let's remove that there. And I want to move into really what I want to talk about today, which is this topic of the myth of the alpha male. And let me bring up my little slide presentation here because I got some ideas I want to share. This concept of the alpha male is a fascinating one. I honestly hadn't really done any deep diving into it until a couple of days ago when, as I mentioned, that video started to take off and I started to get very interesting comments on my YouTube. And I thought, you know what? I need to give this some more time and I need to actually understand better what is going on in this world, because there seems to be a subculture or a group of men who really subscribe to or believe in this way of living, this alpha male kind of mythology or whatever you want to call it, ethos, lifestyle. And for them, it seems to be very rewarding, or it seems to be very aspirational, let's say. It's something they want to work on. For me, I never really quite understood what it was. I'd heard the term alpha male, sigma male. I'd heard about some of the extreme people who we'll talk about here. But I'd never really taken it seriously. And maybe that's because I think it all kind of evolved by the time I was in my mid-30s. So I think I was a little bit past really recognizing that stuff and being, pulled into it. Having said that, if I was a lot younger, maybe I would have been really immersed in it and thought it was the most amazing thing. So I'm open to exploring it. And I want to talk through it a little bit in detail here. So I did some reading. I went and did a deep dive. I actually, would you believe, I went on to Amazon and I read several of Andrew Tate's ebooks. That seemed to be the apex alpha male example out there. There was a bunch of others as well. I read a ton of articles. I found some very interesting stuff, which I'll reference and I'll link in the chat today. And yeah, I read a lot of Wikipedia pages. I read a lot of Reddit threads. And I tried to better understand both sides of the perspective. So I'm going to try my best to be as objective as I can, not subjective, objective as I can, so I can actually offer some ideas here that might help to clarify it. If you've never heard this term, maybe it'll be insightful for you. And let's get into it. All right, so let's look at the myth of alpha males. So where the hell did this idea of alpha males come from? That's a question in itself, because you hear this term thrown around, but what does it actually mean and where does it come from? So interestingly, if you go to Google, the term alpha male originated from some studies that were done of wolves in the wild way back in the early 20th century. I think it was 1947. Was by a animal behaviorist, and then there was an author named David Mech, I think is how you say his name, in the 1970s wrote a book called The Wolf, Ecology and Behavior of an Endangered Species. And he described that there was an alpha as the leader who won control of the pack through violent fights, basically. Now, what happened was, for some reason, business people and human behaviorists started to kind of adopt this idea and think that they could link that same kind of behavior to men in business. And so they started to think of the term alpha male as something that represented a behavior type or an archetype in business. And that's what it became. You can see here that this is from Google. Obviously, this is the Google generative AI putting this together. But misapplication. So the concept of alpha male was mistakenly applied to human behavior by business writers and the general public. The term has become a common trope in discussions of masculinity and social hierarchies. So that's one perspective of it. Other people might say, no, it's the absolute truth and it's the way of the world. And maybe it is. Who knows? But that's what was the common general consensus. And if you type the words alpha male into Google, most of the articles and things that have risen to the top of Google are around the myth of the alpha male, the lie of the alpha male, the alpha males don't exist, that kind of thing. So it's interesting that that's what the perspective has become, but that's the original book that kind of founded the movement. And then it started to move into the more common kind of zeitgeist, if you like, after the 1970s, 80s. And I think especially since the internet era started to take off. So that's the origins of it. Then you have this very interesting other term which has started to evolve and has somewhat became a bit of a joke as well. The term sigma male or sigma, it's an internet slang term. So it's a little bit more new, and it's based on, there's another letter of I think it's the Greek alphabet, which is sigma. That's where that came from, because there's alpha, omega, beta, and then sigma, I think, was another one. I'm not exactly sure on that. But anyway, it's commonly regarded as the rarest type of male. A sigma male is typically denoted as an archetype of a male who is similar to the alpha male. But unlike the alpha male, sigma males are more introverted and seek to dominate themselves, in other words, self-mastery. So I think this is what it started to become. Rather than just focusing on the alpha male, there's also this other sort of secondary archetype that started to appear. And a lot of men these days seem to kind of really buy into this. The little section there, you can see Christian Bale's portrayal of Patrick Bateman in the film American Psycho is often cited as an ideal representation of a sigma male, even though the guy's an insane, potential serial killer. That's a sigma male example, apparently. And then also Tommy Shelby from the show Peaky Blinders, which I actually really liked the show Peaky Blinders. I thought it was a great sort of crime drama, good acting and well played out. And then also Ryan Gosling, who seems to be a kind of a muted personality. So these tend to be sigma males. So this is a different type of alpha male. And then at the bottom there, we have the controversial social media personality Andrew Tate, who is known as a sigma or an alpha male. I don't know which one exactly, but so there we go. So we've got a little bit of an overview of what an alpha male apparently is, the misrepresentation of it, and then also the sigma male as well. And, whether those are real or not depends on your perspective and what you want to think. So, and in my deep dive that I did, these are some of the characteristics that I saw as kind of common to alphas. Okay. And I've got a picture of Mr. Tate there just as a representation. Again, I'm not trying to say he's the only one. I'm sure there's a lot of men. If you go onto Amazon and you look up alpha male, the book titles are hilarious with the pictures of the men on the front. They really kind of play on this idea. But these are the characteristics, okay? So they're typically a self-made millionaire or billionaire. They're a business owner. They're highly financially successful. They've made it in the world of money, and they've done it on their own terms. They're a maverick. They're someone who's, become an entrepreneur and found a way to kind of figure out how to make money and provide for themselves and their families. They're surrounded by attractive women. There's always a ton of women around them who they're sleeping with. There's a lot of polygamy going on. All the women are happy with the man sleeping with all the women, apparently. That's a big thing there. They're able to fight and protect themselves. Andrew Tate has a career as a boxer, or kickboxer, I'm not sure. So, he's an example of that. But yeah, they're typically able to fight if they need to, or definitely protect themselves and their women and, their pack if they need to. They're physically fit and they dress very stylishly. So they're always working out. They've got a six pack. They've got massive shoulders. They're very fit physically, and they're also dressed very stylishly as a result as well. They drive sports cars, they travel first class around the world, and they live in multiple locations. So they have all these homes all around the world, and they're always sort of showing that off, driving around in fancy cars and private jets, all that kind of stuff, flashing money, going to casinos, eating out at fancy restaurants, smoking expensive cigars, drinking expensive wine, whatever. They're aggressive, outspoken, and they get their way. Now, I know this isn't always the case when it comes to the Sigma male, right? But they tend to be more aggressive and outspoken, and they're definitely getting their way in most situations. That's the kind of alpha male ethos, if you like. And I would say they don't follow the conventional lifestyle. That's probably the main one there, is that the alpha doesn't swim with the tide. He does his own thing. He goes against the grain, whatever you want to say. And these are the kind of characteristics that are part of that. So these are the interesting things that I've seen. I'm sure there's many more, and maybe I've generalized some too much, but I think most people would agree these tend to be the alpha male characteristics that we see a lot of the time. Let's flip the script and look at the beta characteristics, okay? So the beta characteristics, and poor Michael Cera was my example because he seems to be a archetype for this online. I know he's an actor playing characters, but generally he seems to be the beta characteristics. So these are the ones that come up. So they're poor, or they're not able to make a lot of money. So they live a meager existence or a very average level of existence. They're unable to attract women, or they can't attract attractive women. So they kind of can't have their pick. They're kind of stuck with whatever they can get, or they're just unable. They're not able to meet any women and have any kind of sexual relationships. They're unable to fight and protect themselves. So if someone threatens them or their family or their friends, they don't know what to do. They run away or they get beaten up or whatever. They're unable to protect themselves. They're unfit and they dress badly. So they're, very skinny and weak, or they're overweight, or, they're just out of shape generally, and they dress poorly. They don't have any style, or they're very boring in their dress sense. They live in a generic home and they drive a normal car. There's not a lot of, aspirational things there. They have a suburban house or a very, average minimal existence that isn't very exciting, and their car isn't exciting either. They probably don't travel as well. They're polite, they're submissive, and they don't get what they want. So this seems to be the way that they're polite, but they're almost submissive in that way, and they never get what they want, or they very rarely get what they want in life. And finally, they follow that conventional lifestyle of going to school, going to college, getting a job, hating their job, getting a mortgage, maybe even getting married, getting divorced, having kids, having to pay child support, and living a boring life that they really don't enjoy. This seems to be the beta characteristics, okay, on the extreme end. Again, I might have missed some things here, I don't know, but these seems to be, from what I've read and what I've looked at the last couple of days, these are the characteristics that kind of denote what a beta male would be. So what's interesting to me, and this is kind of under the surface because I've read a lot of psychology and I've learned a lot about myself as a person, and I've gone internally and thought, okay, what are the things that, if I'm really honest for myself, that I've felt in the past that would be false beliefs that would lead to either of these kind of personalities emerging? Because I'll be honest, at times I've tried in some ways to be like an alpha male in my life. Maybe you have as well. And at other times I've tried, or I've fallen into the trap of being what, is denoted as a beta male as well. There's a middle ground there. That's why I use the term men in the middle a lot. But I think these are the false beliefs that tend to cause a lot of the problem of why we tend to seek being an alpha, or we feel bad being a beta or whatever. So the first one is that I need this thing, or this, activity, or this achievement to feel happy and to feel loved. And again, I've talked about this in other videos, the idea of external validation. It's one of the easiest ways that men mess up their lives. And I think this is one of the ones that's a mistake. They tend to fall into this idea that I need something specific outside of myself to feel happy or to feel loved as a person. And that kind of gets deep, and most people won't admit that. It took me a long time to admit that for myself, but a lot of the time the ambitions I had, that's what I was actually seeking, was just happiness or a sense of being esteemed and valued and loved. The next false belief, I think, is that men have to be, to do, or to have something specific. All right. So it kind of is aligning with the first one, but it's the idea that men in particular, if they're going to be recognized and respected and revered, they have to be, they have to do, or they have to have a certain thing in their life. I don't think that that's true now, but if you spoke to me 25 years ago, I probably did, because I saw a certain archetype that I wanted to be, and I was very determined to be that. And I think for a lot of men, they still fall into that. Whether it's societal pressure, whether it's internal pressure, whatever it is, we tend to think that way. Another one is that I am not like other men because, and then you can fill in the blank, right? Because I'm not physically fit enough, or because I'm more fit, because I don't have enough money, or because I make more money than everyone else, I'm more successful, I'm an entrepreneur, whatever. This one can go both ways, but I think it's one of the traps we fall into is comparisonitis. Because men do tend to seek external solutions to their problems, very often they compare themselves unfavorably or over favorably to other men. I don't know if that's a term, but they look at other men and say, well, I'm better or I'm worse or whatever. And then that leads to the last one, which is I'm ahead or I'm behind of other men because of this. So it's kind of like it's a competition or it's a race, right? We're trying to beat other men in some way. In reality, you can't actually ever beat anyone at life. It's an infinite game, as Simon Sinek says, and you can't actually win at business or win at life. It's just how it is. But hey, we all try at some stage. So these false beliefs, I think, can really trap us if we're not careful, and we can fall into them very easily, especially if we haven't thought them through for ourselves. So I would challenge you to think about, do you have any of these beliefs under the surface? I know I have a lot of them myself. And so I think we have to really acknowledge them and say, is this something I'm stuck in? The last couple of questions I have for you here today are around the idea of alpha males. And I want to ask you, based on the characteristics that I explained before, do you actually know any alpha males in your life? Do you personally know any alpha males? Yes, there's a lot of examples of them online, of people who seem to live this alpha male lifestyle, but do you personally know any in your life? I'm curious to know. If you do, add it to the comments. I'd love to hear about them and who they are as a person. But I think it's actually a very rare thing that we would ever run into someone who espouses and displays all the characteristics that we think are an alpha male. And then on the flip side, I would ask you, do you know any beta males? Do you actually know any people who are abysmal, unhappy losers, people who haven't made something in themselves? And I would say probably that's more likely or more common, at least from the outside. Most people aren't a one extreme or the other, right? They're a mix. And that's why I use the term men in the middle. We're somewhere in the balance there. But if you look at the alpha male kind of psychology or the culture or the ethos, a lot of us aspire, I think, in some ways to be the alpha. But actually, in reality, we've never actually met one. We don't know anyone who we look up to who we can say that person is a complete alpha, especially based on the characteristics that seem to, show them online. Again, there's plenty of examples of people who display that online through their social media, but there's very few in real life. And the last question I have for you is, if you actually did know an alpha male in your life, would you enjoy being around them? Do you think that person would actually be enjoyable to spend time with? Would they actually make you feel better as a person about yourself? And would they help you to become the very best version of yourself? That's my question to think about, because very often I think we look at these idealized versions of men, and whether it is an alpha or a sigma or whatever it is, and we say, wow, if I can just be like that, or I can be more like that, right? But if you think about it, if you were around a man like that, is that a person who you'd actually gain benefit from being around? Or would you just be serving their needs? It's an interesting thought to consider. The last thought I have for you today, my friend, is this one. It's something that's taken me a long time, I would say 30 years of personal development to understand, and that's that only you can decide what your identity will be. Very often we can fall into the trap of comparing ourselves to other men, to ideals, whatever. But the truth is, no one else can actually decide for you. You have to decide personally where you fit. I know where I fit in the world. I do believe I'm a man in the middle, and I feel very comfortable in that. And I feel confident, and I believe I'm making an impact in the right way as a result. But you have to decide for yourself what you want to be and who you want to be and how you want to live your life in the world. So there we go, my friends. That is my attempt to talk through the myth of the alpha male. I hope that that is useful and insightful. It is a little bit of a tumultuous topic. It's not something that I ever thought I'd go deep into, but hey, clearly there is a need and there is a lot of emotion built behind this one. And again, based on the responses that I've got online the last couple of days, this is a topic worth exploring. I think a lot of men in their 30s and 40s and beyond, maybe we're a little bit past some of this discussion, but it does impact a lot of men who are coming up through the ranks who we may be mentoring and helping and supporting, especially those who grew up with the world being completely online. I think this does impact men more than we realize. And that's why I wanted to spend some time exploring it today. I don't know if I'll go super deep into this in the future. If the topic comes up again, maybe we'll explore it. I have been encouraged in the past to do commentary around this, and I generally try not to get into negativity or criticizing other people of how they live. I prefer to just stay on the side of what can we do. But I wanted to just explore this today and look at it in a little bit more depth. So I hope that that's useful for you. And yeah, I'm curious to know in the comments if you get a chance to watch this back. If you weren't here, I can see there's several people here. Thank you, my friends, for being here today. I appreciate you all. And yeah, let's move on. Next week, we'll be back with some more episodes of Man Talks. Next week, I'm going to try to do the episodes at 2 p.m. Pacific. This week, I did more morning, just worked with my schedule. But next week, I'm going to try to do them at 2 p.m. Pacific where I can. So hopefully, we'll have some more afternoon kind of connections with people who join us. And maybe we'll even try an evening version of it. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. But until then, I hope you have an amazing weekend, whatever you are up to. I hope you're spending time doing something enjoyable and fulfilling wherever you are in the world. I appreciate you being here, appreciate the community that we're building. And yeah, I just appreciate you as a person. I know that people who tune into this are typically people of great worth. So I value you. All right, my friends, have a wonderful weekend. I'll see you next week for another episode of Man Talks. Bye.